Good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen and we will walk through drafting a discussion section together. So here's a paper that I've been working on with a couple of colleagues of mine. Ileana Saunders, who is an undergrad student at APU, is finishing up right now, and Chloe Yin, who is a former student of APU. Anyway, this is the title page. Let me walk you through it, and then we will jump and focus primarily on outlining the discussion today. So, this is a paper that they came up with titled The Ick, When Dating Partners Elicit Spontaneous Feelings of Disgust. And the whole purpose of this paper is to see what elicits the ick, this like disgusting feeling, this aversion towards a potential romantic partner, and to see whether it's correlated with theoretically related individual differences. So, personality traits that should be related to disgust should be correlated with it. So, anyway, that was the point of the paper. This is the title page. You won't have an author note, but just make sure this is all centered vertically. We'll talk about that next week. Abstract will be on page 2. You guys don't have that yet, but that's okay. We'll work on that next week. The beginning of page 3 is the start of the paper, right? So notice the title repeated again. I should actually make sure these titles are the same. I need to go back and edit this for next week. But anyway, page 3 starts the intro, setting the stage. So let me read just a little bit so you can see where I'm going. Right off the bat, right? The ick, a sudden, often intense aversion to a romantic partner triggered by a seemingly trivial trait or characteristic. This is the operational definition. And I would encourage you guys in your introductions just to make sure that whenever you're talking about a variable, that you define exactly what you mean in this context. So anyway, this is the ick. It's gained considerable cultural attention. We've seen it on reality TV shows, people getting the ick because of an overly bright smile or awkward hand holding. It appears in popular media like Friends and Seinfeld, for people abruptly losing interest in dates over these minor quirks, such as Jerry not liking dating a woman with manly hands, and um, a person who eats too much and calls it a snack. Anyway, arbitrary things like that. Further showing that this is an important and timely and meaningful phenomenon. It's popular, right? It's on TikTok, it's on Instagram. And then the final sentence of this opening paragraph, right? Together, these cultural portrayals suggest that the ick may reflect deeper psychological mechanisms rooted in evolved mate selection processes. This is the theoretical framework that I'm trying to use to strengthen the overall paper, to make it seem like this isn't just a descriptive paper just showing, hey, the ick is out there. Instead, I want it to extend theory, extend the previous findings, so it adds to what psychologists already know. So anyway, I use an evolutionary framework. From an evolutionary perspective, disgust is evolved as a protective mechanism against threats that could compromise survival and reproductive success, originally functioning to help avoid pathogens like disease and contagion threats like that. Disgust later adapted to serve additional purposes in social and sexual contexts, guiding behavior to avoid social and reproductive costs. Okay. This results in 3 primary domains of disgust: pathogen, moral, and sexual. Pathogen disgust promotes avoidance of contamination cues, reducing infection risk, while moral disgust operates as a social tool, condemning behaviors perceived as immoral and promoting group cohesion. Sexual disgust, in contrast, is attuned to mate selection cues. Okay, here we go. Functioning to avert reproductive costs by reducing attraction to partners with characteristics signaling health risks, genetic incompatibility, or other traits that may compromise offspring viability. So basically, what I'm getting at here is sexual disgust finally balances reproductive benefits and costs. According to this perspective, this theoretical framework, it conserves mating opportunities for compatible partners, though it may also strain social bonds or result in missing mating chances for partners perceived as incompatible. This evolved discuss sensitivity, which discourages attraction to traits perceived as low in mate value, helps individuals focus on partners likely to support reproductive success. And in contemporary dating, the ick may manifest as a heightened disgust response, reflecting the mechanism of sexual disgust, but adapted to respond to cues of perceived incompatibility, even those that seem minor or idiosyncratic. Disgust sensitivity, the degree to which individuals react to disgust-inducing stimuli, may play a significant role in how intensely one experiences the ick, with greater disgust-sensitive individuals likely perceiving even slight partner quirks as signals of incompatibility. For instance, minor behaviors that are socially neutral, awkward laugh, may activate disgust mechanisms if they subtly signal low compatibility, leading to a sudden aversion that prioritizes reproductive integrity. I'm not digging this paragraph. It's too long, it's too verbose, it needs to be more clear and concise. But hey, we will deal with that next week when we're talking about editing and putting the finishing touches on the paper. Right now, we have picked up what the paper is about. We've picked up a theoretical framework. We've picked up our variables, ick, right? And individual differences in disgust sensitivity. So now we're ready to rock and roll. We scroll down, we see even more support for our claim that those two things should be related. And then later on, we have the specific hypothesis, which also needs to be cleaned up. I'm not digging this either. Anyway, we hypothesize that higher disgust sensitivity will predict a greater likelihood of experiencing the ick. Okay, cool. So this is a correlational study looking at the relationship between these two variables. Disgust sensitivity, a heightened reactivity to disgust-inducing stimuli, may lower thresholds for detecting potential incompatibility cues in others. This aversive response can prompt individuals to interpret minor partner behaviors as indicators of unsuitability, leading to the ick as an evolved protective mechanism in mate selection. Okay, cool. So then after that, you guys have your method, your procedure. You guys might even have a table kind of showing me what's going on. All of these things in there. This is a longer study, so it's going to be longer than yours, but that's okay. And then you have your results, what's going on. Here we have a table showing what type of behaviors elicit the ick most amongst women. And it seems like it's this physical appearance, something odd. Fashion faux pas is more ick-inducing for women, whereas a date who's publicly embarrassing is more ick-inducing for men. Interesting. Cool. But more importantly, what about the relationship between the ick, how much, whether they know about it, whether they've experienced it, how often they've experienced it? Is that related to things like number 8, disgust propensity? And when we start looking at these correlations, we start seeing that people that are higher in disgust propensity are more likely to experience the ick, and they're more likely to have experienced the ick more frequently, as well as a general likelihood of experiencing the ick. Cool. So anyway, we have some cool stuff going on, and it seems like this is interesting. Cool. So now we have our discussion section. All we've done so far is just set the stage, right? We've told them, hey, here's this cool idea, like someone should do it. It's all grounded in current research and theory. Here's how we would do it. Here's how the results would turn out. Now what? This is where you can pause this week, work on SS11, and start fleshing out these answers to be discussed, right? So to start off, it's a good idea to, in paragraph 1, to remind the readers about the hypothesis. What's going on? What are we doing? What was the aim of the study, right? Its focus, what was our hypothesis? So for us, we would think of the variables disgust, sensitivity, the relation between the two, and was the hypothesis supported? Yes or no, or somewhat. All depends on how you made up your results last week. So anyway, let's think of just this as paragraph one, kind of summarizing what's going on. And then after paragraph one, let's move on to paragraph two. What does this mean, right? Let's discuss it. What are the implications of these findings? Do they extend theory, right? How do they fit back into disgust as an evolved mechanism for mate selection, perhaps? Do they confirm other related findings? Or do they seem to contradict? And don't be afraid if they seem to contradict, that tells us something interesting. It might tell us something interesting about the methodology or the participants or the conditions or time by which one phenomena popped up, but it didn't in a different situation. All of those reveal aspects of what is driving this condition, what is moderating this condition, all really cool stuff. So anyway, be creative, right? Think about what this might mean. In paragraph 3, it's fine to also acknowledge your limitations. I personally like to have a subheading here that says strengths, limitations, and future directions. That's a personal preference, a little tip and trick, but it is up to you. The point here is to start acknowledging that, let me do a subheading just because I find discussion sections choppy. Strengths, limitations, and future directions. Cool. This will be a second level subheading within the discussion as a first level subheading. So what are the strengths? What did your study do better than others? Or what were some limitations of previous studies that your study had to overcome in its design, in its participants, in its measures? You name it, right? If you've taken a research methodology class already, identifying some of these strengths might come naturally. If not, no worries. Just think about what makes your study better potentially than others. And next week, I'm more than happy to chat more about this too. So anyway, every study has some strengths. More importantly, but not to shortchange, let's also talk about the limitations. If your results didn't turn out, why might that have been the case? Was it perhaps the survey was too long and maybe participant data quality was low? Maybe you asked the questions in a way that really didn't tap into what you really wanted to. Maybe that's a limitation. Anyway, it is up to you, again, to kind of think about what these limitations are. Personally, what I find is people tend to shoot themselves in the foot. They are so critical about their own research that when they discuss it, they tear it apart at the very end. And on one hand, it's important to acknowledge your limitations, but also not tear it apart and make it seem like your research isn't valuable. It is, right? You see the value in it better than anybody. So anyway, what I would encourage you to do whenever you bring up these limitations and include its future directions. If you were to design another study to overcome that limitation, what would it look like? That is your suggestion to future researchers on how to extend these findings, right? Future directions, different populations, different measures, maybe extending it to other variables that are related that I didn't have a chance to explore here. All of that stuff is where this goes. And along the way, whenever you are saying anything that isn't common sense or your own opinion, make sure it has a citation behind it. It's okay to use the same citations from the introduction section or bring in more if need be. And then finally, at the end, what I would include is a final conclusion paragraph where you just kind of summarize the entire paper, remind the reader, really short, just a few sentences. This was the aim. This is what we did. This is what we found. And this is what it means. And then after that, you scroll to the end, further down, and you will see your references. So feel free to start combining all of these sections to the paper. And next week, when I am back in person, we will put the finishing touches, the final edits, and then we'll be done with research proposals. Yeah. Keep up the good work, everybody. See you next week.